Welcome to Fantasy View, with yours truly, Jason Hubbard. Please feel free to check out my books through the links in the description below. Am I missing something here? Is there something about Alpha World Book 2 forming the company that I just don't get? Am I driving myself insane by obsessing over this book, so I should use a palate cleanser other than this podcast? Maybe. It's been a while since I read this 2017 book by Daniel Shinhoven. I think that's how you say it. Still, it popped into my head recently, and I once again remarked at how odd it is. Sure, it lured me in with this cover art, but nothing about the story made me want to continue with this 8-part series. I gave it a 2-star review on Amazon, and I don't regret it, but nonetheless, most reviews are positive, with most giving it 5 stars. One guy said it's an excellent book. Another said it's entertaining fluff. With hundreds of readers singing this book's praises, they're not all just being nice to the author, are they? Do I not like it because I don't fall into its target demographic? Well, as you can tell by the cover art, this is an erotic fantasy novel. No big deal, those are a dime a dozen. But it's also a litRPG, a subgenre that's beginning a solid fan base. This genre is basically about characters having adventures in super immersive online RPGs. They either have a modern or hyper-futuristic setting, and their characters usually jack themselves into their games Matrix style. Because nothing can ever go wrong with that kind of setup. So is that the problem? Am I not down with video games enough to appreciate the nuances of a book like this? No, that can't be the case. I've played tons of single-player RPGs, everything from Xenoblade Chronicles to Trails of Cold Steel 3 and 4, plus Dragon Age and Divinity Original Sin. And I've poured hundreds of hours into Final Fantasy XIV, sharing adventures with hundreds of other players online. So here's a series of questions that might help answer if this book is right for you. Number 1. Do you like reading patch notes? When a game like World of Warcraft gets an update, do you like to check out every issue that got resolved? Seriously, have you ever found yourself making some coffee or tea, then sit back, get comfy, and just read patch notes? Fix an issue where a player would explode when throwing a pie at NPC. Something like that. Is that your idea of a good time? Number 2. Do you want a protagonist who not only comes across as an anti-hero, but could also be the villain in another story? Someone such as, say, a former cop who executed an inmate in front of everyone for revenge. If that sounds oddly specific, it's because it is. Number 3. Do you want a story that perfectly captures the MMO experience, presenting both the exciting parts and the boring, mundane ones? Number 4. Do you want your main protag to engage in an extremely healthy sex life, including BDSM with multiple partners? If you've answered yes to at least 3 of these questions, then you should be able to check out this book with few reservations. As for me, all 4 questions raise the issues I have with this book. Let's get into them. Number 1. Those patch notes. You thought I was kidding about them, huh? Early in the book, our hero, Seamus, logs out of the game of Alpha World and looks over the notes for an upcoming update. These notes on my Kindle device go on for 5 pages. Think about that. 5 pages of patch notes for a fictional video game. Of course, your mileage may vary depending on your settings, but it's still several pages of notes. Isn't that a little excessive? It would work fine if the author simply wrote that Seamus looked over the notes and was interested in 1 or 2 of them. But no, he displayed all of them, such as creatures killed by guards no longer award loot or experience to players, and God's Grace now lasts 12 hours until you log out or until you initiate combat with another player. And in case you're wondering, no, none of these notes become relevant later in the book. Granted, I haven't read any future installments, but at least in this book, all those patch notes seem like a waste of space, and a waste of my time since I read every single one thinking they might be crucial to the plot. What else can I do but conclude that the author likes reading patch notes as one likes to read the Sunday Funnies? And he hopes you like reading them too. Number 2. A villainous hero. Yep, Seamus was a cop who blew the brains out of an inmate who was on his way to trial. The inmate had seriously hurt a friend of Seamus's, and seeing him in court just wasn't enough for Seamus. I don't even think the Punisher would go that far. Seamus, of course, went through his own trial and was convicted and sentenced to several decades in prison. Well, kinda, but not really. He was given the option of being a beta tester for an experimental immersive MMO. As punishment for what he did, he goes on adventures with other beta testers and indulges in a very robust sex life, which includes his NPC fiancée, who is a succubus. Wow, maybe I should try blowing out someone's brain sometime. And if President Trump wanted to pardon me, I'd be like, no thanks, I'm good. I'll just take this VR gig where I can keep Mr. Happy satisfied from now till kingdom come. One more thing. Just before Seamus pulled the trigger, he gave an awfully long-winded speech in the inmate's ear about why he was doing it. It makes me think that this was a personal scene for the author, which only adds to the creepiness factor. Number 3. Capturing the MMO experience. As any MMO player can tell you, some games are more exciting than others, but they all have some downtime where you do mundane tasks. In this book, our hero goes to a guild hall to apply for a new guild. The author describes the guild hall as if going there was some kind of main event, and our hero drops some coin to make it official. Later, Seamus and his succubus fiancée visit a records keeper, where they have a 4-course meal and discuss records. There's also some level grinding and going to lunch with a friend. Does that sound exciting to you? Well, there's also a moment where Seamus has a little spat with a young nobleman NPC and risks having a beef with the entire noble NPC house. That's kind of interesting, but it's not nearly as tense as it could be. As for the exciting part, Seamus and friends battle a fearsomely powerful boss at the end of a raid. They wipe the first time, but after some grinding, they come out on top. It's better to have this battle than be without, but in the end, it's just players fighting a digital monster. There are no real-life stakes here, no real sense of tension and danger. I know reading about a fictional MMO is the whole point of this book, but I also know what I just said. Number 4. Healthy sex life. Seamus has sex. A lot. He's into S&M too. Considering what crime he did, it's no wonder he's into power fantasies. And to the author's credit, he gives ample notice of this adult content in the book's description. Quote, "The book contains real-life situations, including sensual scenes that don't get fully graphic but might make you uncomfortable." Yeah, because killing a criminal when he was going through due process anyway isn't exactly what society expects of you. Later on, he seems to get a little defensive. Quote, "There are a number of hugs and kisses, numerous fade-to-black scenes that hint at sex, and 3 times where oral sex is found but not graphically described. Please remember, there is a succubus in this story, aka a sex demon. As such, sex is referenced frequently." Okay, so there's hanky-panky in this book. That may not be to everyone's taste, but at least you know it's in this book. My question is, if the sensual scenes aren't fully described, then what's the point? Why not go further than fade to black? It's not like books have a rating system that restricts sales. It's not like school libraries will be tripping over themselves to get copies of this. Go wild. So that's Alpha World Book 2, Forming the Company. I personally think it's as dull as its title. It's mostly set up for bigger events down the line, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Setup can be entertaining if done well. But while there's no lack of trying from Shinhoven, it's not enough to be engaging throughout. But who knows, maybe you'll like it just fine. Hopefully I've given you enough information to help influence your buying decision. And if you've read it, please leave a comment saying why it's the best thing since sliced bread, or why it resembles 1-week-old moldy dog shit. On a final note, just to let you know that I'm not some snob who's totally against lit RPGs, here's a recommendation from me. Temple of Sorrow by Carrie Summers, the first installment of the Stonehaven League. This is the only book in the series I've read, but I think it's better executed than Shinhoven's. It has a likable hero, a viable threat, and mature themes that have more to do than bumping uglies. Why not give both books a try? That's it for this episode. I'm Jason Hubbard. Thanks for listening, and please keep reading. Patch notes if that's your bag.